Senate Democrat leader Chuck Schumer plans to bring the Tax Relief for American Families and Workers Act to the floor for a procedural vote this week. But is this just another show vote? Also, the $79 billion package is, well, it's not quite as pro-family as some would like to see. Joining me now to talk about this, Chris Gacek, a senior fellow for regulatory studies here at the Family Research Council. Chris, welcome to Washington Watch.
It's good to be with you, Tony.
So the topic of child tax credit and relief for families, something that is very near and dear to the Family Research Council, something that we really spearheaded back in the 90s, the child tax credit. But these terms are not all equal. The left has a different version. Let's talk about that.
Well, essentially what we're involved in, or what we're interested in doing, is providing a basis by which lower-income families can be given credits or incentives to work and provide credits to families for children. And on their side, everything is about converting everything to more welfare and increasing the reach and scope of the traditional welfare payment system, which is never what this program has been about.
So instead of creating responsibility, it creates dependence. Exactly.
I think that this is what you're kind of seeing happening, if this is allowed to go forward, is that you would have the opposite of the incentive structure for which all of these great programs that we were involved in going back to for decades, right? They would be undermined. And so this is not a direction in which the Republican members of the House or the Senate should go down.
Right. So, I mean, what they're not saying is that more than 90% of the benefits in this Tax Relief for American Families and Workers Act comes from new welfare cash payments, not tax cuts for working families.
Exactly, and I think in the course of your career, you've had a lot of experience with this, so you must have a lot of. It must be disappointing to sort of see how this is trending. I don't know if this just sort of, the Democrats, I don't think they've ever really been super happy about it, but I don't know if this is something that has sort of clawed its way into the law over after the COVID debacle, or it's an interesting set of problems, right?
Yeah. So, Chris, the timing of this makes it also suspect, because during this summer, since I think the reauthorization of the Federal Aviation Administration, there's been nothing but show votes on the Senate floor, most of them dealing with abortion and other quote-unquote reproductive freedom measures.
Well, I think you're right about this. I mean, and there's something very interesting about this, something that we've talked about a little bit, internally at FRC. But now that you mention it, I hadn't really put it together. But one of the things that's been going on in the sort of the macro political debate after the Republican convention is that J.D. Vance has been involved in this big fight with Kamala Harris over. Saying that the Democrat Party is not a family-friendly policy, and it's an anti-natalist policy, right? It's opposed to child policies, and it's opposed to people having children. So I guess, it really what you said makes a lot of sense, because maybe they're rolling this thing out as a way to counter the charge, which is true about their party. That they're really not, that they're a party that has a different kind of agenda. This sort of the agenda of the sort of the feminist sexual revolution, right? And he really sort of laid into them with a lot of energy, and there was a big exchange about that. And he actually raised this issue of the child tax credit. I think he was kind of saying that they seem to be backing away from it. So maybe after that occurred, or after some statement she made, they had to back her up.
So how can you be the party of unrestricted abortion up to the moment of birth at taxpayer expense, and then turn around and say you're pro-child?
Well, exactly. I mean, this is exactly the problem, and I think you know, look, this whole problem of the birth dearth and the lowing, declining birth rates is a problem that people are recognizing. And I think one of the most famous people, and who sort of mentioned this as a sort of a geopolitical problem and just a problem for all people, but in the United States too, is Elon Musk, right? So this isn't something we're making up, or that this is some fantasy of the social conservative right. And when you have these policies, abortion is the most obvious. Well, it's one of them, right? I mean, another obvious one is this sort of the decline of birth rates that has come along with the whole sort of anti-natalist arsenal, right? It's all sorts of contraceptives and sterilization and these sorts of policies, right? And they're not illegal, or they're not all the same sort of the idea, but the general idea is that going back to Margaret Sanger is they don't like kids, right?
Right.
And then so the ultimate consequence of this is that when you sort of divorce this from any kind of long-term consequences and thinking of individuals making wrong decisions, you have a country like Italy that's basically exterminating itself.
Well, it's just like the comment I played earlier from Pete Buttigieg, that abortion on demand up to the moment of birth at taxpayers' expense, which is their definition of freedom, makes men freer. And I mean, that's their view of this.
Well,
Right,
I mean,
Chris,
this is like, Hugh Hefner was probably smiling in his grave, right?
Yeah.
I mean, if you think about the sexual libertines are all over America are like, yeah, go,
But we're
on,
funding
man.
this. We're funding this with our tax dollars, and this is just more of this irresponsibility that we're talking about when Democrats try to couch this as pro-child programs.